The president made a lot of claims last night and told a lot of lies in the process.
When I'm signing for the XL pipeline and the Dakota, I said, by the way, who made the pipe? But I put a little clause, handwritten. It said, anybody builds a pipeline in the United States will use American steel and fabricate in America. No more taking it over on boats. 54 Muslim nations coming together. I said, for me to go, I'm only going, we had to negotiate, if you spend billions of dollars, billions, on having things manufactured in our country with our jobs and our workers for your country. And hundreds of billions of dollars was spent and given to American companies who are going to make American products and send those products over to the wealthy countries of the Middle East. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars. Last week, a brand new coal mine just opened in the state of Pennsylvania, first time in decades. We've reversed it. But they built these studios, CNN. Whoop. Hey, the camera just went off. I can't imagine. It's covered live. The camera just went off. I can't imagine why. They love what we're doing. You see what we're doing. You see what we've already done. Home builders are starting to build again. The time has come for new immigration rules which say that those seeking admission into our country must be able to support themselves financially and should not use welfare for a period of at least 5 years. And we'll be putting in legislation to that effect very shortly. Now, the Paris Agreement, I could tell you stories, I could give you stats, I could go on all day. It's a catastrophe if we would have agreed. And they all say it's non-binding. Like hell, it's non-binding.
Where do we begin, Willie Geist, on those facts that he claims to spew out to the audience that's just screaming at him because it's his base?
Well, let's tick through some of those that we saw there. The president says he signed, quote, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of agreements with Middle Eastern countries, but some of those deals were put into place, you'll remember, under President Obama, and many are preliminary and require further negotiation. The president said a coal mine just opened in Pennsylvania for the first time in decades. Last year, the state's Crescent mine was being put back to work following weaker coal production in Asia. The president suggested CNN shut off its cameras when they didn't like what he was saying. It's a line he's used at rallies in the past, including just a month before the election. Last night, Fox was the only network to take the president's comments in full. President Trump said home builders are starting to build again. As Reuters reported last week, quote, U.S. housing starts hit 8-month low. The president pointed to new, stricter guidelines for how immigrants can receive welfare. As NBC said, quote, those requirements or something similar to them do already exist. The president attacked the Paris climate deal, saying, quote, like hell, it's non-binding. The New York Times Q&A from last month reads, quote, the deal is non-binding. And Daniel Dale of the Toronto Star pointed out many of these falsehoods. He said the level of lies rivaled some of the president's 2016 campaign speeches. So
John Meacham, I'm just curious what this is reminiscent of. What could this be reminiscent of if you had to make a parallel? A president telling networks to turn off their cameras, a president telling untruths, lies to an audience of supporters that basically treat those lies as applause lines.
The best example is the best example is President Nixon, and even that is a little tricky. No dork pun intended. There was a sense during really starting in the spring of '73 forward into the summer of '74, when President Nixon it was unclear at some point whether he was lying to us, lying to himself as well as to us.
Right, but can I broaden the question? What is this reminiscent to even outside of the United States?
Well, you're alluding to fabled and terrible totalitarian regimes in Europe in the 1930s, I think. And the idea that, and also even now, regimes like North Korea, where the dear leader speaks, and we're all supposed to
What are the parallels?
That what the dear leader says has to be followed, whether it's associated with reality or not, whether it's grounded in reality or not. It's a cult of the state. It's a cult not of religion and neighborhoods and civic life and an obligation to facts as we perceive them and through common sense, which was a huge part of really the American experiment in the beginning. We weren't supposed to just listen to kings and clerics who for 1,000 years had a monopoly on dictating the terms of reality. The point of the United States was that we all had the ability to look at reality, make our own decisions, and participate in a collective enterprise to govern ourselves.
I'm going to go to Elise now, but it seems, Meacham, it was easier for you to make a parallel outside of the United States than one inside, which to me is extremely disturbing and potentially catastrophic. Elise, am I ahead of my skis? Am I overstating this?
No, I mean, I think it's factually correct to say that this is a president who lies constantly. The empirical evidence is there. The difference is that I believe that a lot of Trump's supporters, his most diehard supporters, see these as little lies. They see them as lies that don't matter, whereas they put up with a political class for so many years that has been lying about big things. President Obama saying you can keep your insurance. Now they see it as, President Obama was spying on the incoming president's team. But this is how Trump supporters perceive it.
Yeah, but it's pernicious, right? I mean, you have a series of falsehoods peddled at these rallies, and then you combine it with what is objectively a crackdown on the press corps, what's happening at the White House right now, where you don't have live briefings, you don't have audio or video coming from these briefings. Sean and Sarah don't talk to the press as much as their predecessors. Trump hasn't done an interview in weeks. And what you end up is with an incredibly altered set of realities, they're not really realities, being broadcast to voters with little bit of ability to actually question it and probe it. And I think that's a really pernicious development for the American discourse.
Do you think the people there in Iowa gathered last night in Iowa, handpicked, a crowd handpicked, really selected just for the president's amusement and entertainment? Do you think they view him as the president of the United States or as an element of theater that they're used to?
Well, it depends. I mean, when you talk to some of these people and you do ask them about what are, I would say objectively, some conspiracy theories or mistruths, you will find out that a lot of them fundamentally do believe it. That they're told it, they think it's true. It's very hard to dissuade them of this truth. And that might be because of confirmation biases or just partisan biases and whatnot. But some of it is because he has altered the way that we consume information. It's just very difficult in this day and age to say this is an objective fact when someone is challenging the press corps, limiting the press corps' access, bashing the press corps constantly. It does create what I just said as a pernicious development. I think we downplay because it's weird and funny and theatrical, but it's not.
It's weird and it's disturbing.
But I think we need to consider that this is not going away and that this is the new normal.
Exactly.
And you look at
totally
Georgia
agree.
6 and what that was and the incredible amount of money, turnout out the wazoo, and a weak Republican candidate still won. And granted, I mean, John Ossoff was very charismatic and engaging, but he was a weak candidate in that district.
You're reminded watching that just how comfortable he is in those settings, too. For him as a president.
That's his cabinet meeting, Willie.
Well,
everybody's saying, you're great, you're great, you're great, you're great, no matter what he says.
And
that's where he's comfortable.
You get the sense that the past 6 months have been more difficult. He said that out loud, that this job is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And for him to be able to step back into campaign mode, it reminds him that he does have people out there who support him. He does have people out there who love him. And as Elise said, he's emboldened by going, as he said, 5-0, 4-0 in these special elections over the last few months. He said, well, maybe, you know what? All this noise is media noise.
I think that's
the voters are on my side, is what he believes after that.
Disturbing condition. But